Hi everybody. So here's a really chilling story. I don't think anybody would believe this. I hardly believed it, but this is really true. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. So this is a story about symbiotic living with other creatures and without any quarrel, actually, but it's bizarre. We hired a lady, her name was Francina, probably the best cleaner I ever met in my life. Boy, did she clean. She went through a house in no time at all, and she was like a whirlwind. And she cleaned really well too, and she had energy to spare. At the end of a long day, she would pack up her things and briskly walk 2 miles to her home. Every morning, she took her young son 7 kilometers, she walked it, to his school and back 7 kilometers, then 2 kilometers to us. Cleaned like anything, because we had an enormous house on the farm, plus it was a 23-bedroomed establishment for various people. Students came there and visitors from time to time. It was a large place. And she cleaned everything, and she did it well before the end of the day, and then she'd pack up and go. She had lived and grown up on the farm next to us, and she lived in this partly formal house and partly sort of shanty house. Now when I say partly, it was brick and mortar, but they had extended onto it using Victorian profile corrugated iron, and the place was quite large inside. And it was her husband was no longer living with her. As is the custom there, these villagers can have more than one wife, and he chose to live with the second wife. Left her to fend for the family on the farm and visited there once a weekend or every second weekend. So there she was, Francina. So she had the young son, who was probably around 3. He was Clinton. She had a newborn child, a cute little girl whom she called Dawn, after my wife. And then there was the young boy whom she took to school every day. And I think there were 2 other children who had to go to school as well. And there was one who had graduated from primary school, was in high school somewhere else. She walked there by herself. So it was quite a large family. Anyway, every day she came to work. She was punctual, did her job like a whirlwind, as I said, went home. One day, I was sitting there, I think it was a weekend, a Saturday, when they're not normally at home because of sports and all sorts of things going on at the school. She rushed up to the house, knocked on the door, and I answered, and she said, with an alarming look on her face, that her daughter had gone home earlier than expected, opened the door, and there was quite a large snake lying on the floor of the house, sort of partly between 2 of the beds. And when she went in, the snake quickly darted off under one of the beds and disappeared. Now they were terrified, and they did not want to go in the house, which I understand, because the house was jam-packed with goods, and a fairly large venomous snake in there. It could have been a mamba, for all I knew. There were lots of mambas around there. It could have been a cobra. And there were lots of wild animals there. I mean, she lived in some pretty thick bush, and there were leopards there, and hyenas, and baboons came and went, and a great deal of animals there, lots of wildlife. And plenty of cobras, plenty of mambas. And there was a large grey snake in their house. Could have been a mamba or a cobra. Either way, this spelled big trouble, because if they went in and tried to conduct their normal life that evening, there could have been an accident. And a bite from a mamba or a large cobra could spell death for one or more of them. So I got together a container, a couple of hook sticks, a couple of grab sticks, got 2 trusted farm hands, and the person who was the most important there, of course, was dear old Respect, who was pretty good at catching snakes and helping out. And so 2 farm hands, myself, and off we went. We got down to the house with Francina, and the children were all sitting outside in the shade of a large acacia tree. So off we went to work. We went inside, and there were 2 portions of the house. In the center was a sort of an upright, very heavy, antique-ish cabinet. On the left side, in the shanty town side, if I can put it that way, the corrugated iron side, there were a number of beds, a couple of homemade beds very low to the ground, boxes, hanging contraptions all over the place, and so on. And we decided to empty that side first. So we went methodically, meticulously, bringing each piece, each item out and putting them outside and checking. At some point we found a piece of old snakeskin. And I thought, now this is very interesting. That's old snakeskin. It's months old. And then we found another piece of snakeskin, also very old snakeskin. And I thought, that's very interesting. So there's been a snake in here before. And there's one currently in here now. And so we just proceeded. And after about, I would say, an hour or an hour and a half, I wasn't checking the time, we got to this massive cabinet. Now, what was extraordinary is that although there was a hard floor under all the beds and things on the side we had just cleared, and although there was a hard concrete floor on the side we had yet to clear, this cabinet was standing on dirt. There was no floor in that section. No floor had ever been cast there. No concrete slab had been cast there. So here was this cabinet. It's quite large, probably about 1.8 meters long by 600 wide, 600 millimeters wide. A fairly high 4-drawer cabinet. And one side almost against the wall, and the other side protruding out. It was almost like a bit of a room divider. And I said to the guys, okay, this thing is pretty stuck on the ground here. It looks like termites, in fact, have been active at some time, and they've closed all around the cabinet on the side here, so you can't really even possibly lift it, but let's try. I said, I will get down on the ground and look under the cabinet and snake stick ready just in case, although I didn't expect anything there. And they heaved and got the side of the cabinet up, and I got the shock of my life, because there was a snouted cobra of about 6 foot long, say 1.8 meters, with its head right near the end I was looking in. In fact, if I blew, I would have blown straight into his face. And it could have lunged out and bitten me, but cobras don't normally do that. If they're under something and they can retreat, they'll rather retreat. Anyway, it was a bit of a close call, and I said, drop the cabinet. They dropped the cabinet. I said, there's a big snake under there. And I said, we have to get ready now, get everything ready. We're going to lift the cabinet, catch it. And I went and looked around, and on the side of the cabinet closest to the wall, there was a big hole in the wall, like this, massive hole. It was in part of the corrugated iron where it met the brick and mortar. And then I saw there was a big hole going into the cabinet at the bottom, chewed probably by rats some time ago, because it looked very old, and it was worn and smooth. Very unusual setup. Got my snake stick ready. They went out, got a couple of snake hooks and extra snakes, the grab stick. Got the tin ready, etc. Came back, lifted the cabinet, no snake. So put it down, the snake's gone. And where on earth, how did it manage to get out without us even knowing? So we decided to go around the side which we hadn't unpacked, and started pulling and getting some things out, taking them outside, at which point one of the staff said, I've just heard the snake going back under the cabinet. I could hear it crawling in through the hole. There was a sound there. I said, okay, great. I'm going to get ready again and in position with the grab stick. I would like you to lift the cabinet again, and I'm going to grab it. They lift the cabinet. I got the shock of my life again. There was a much bigger snake there, a different one. This one was about 8 foot long, if not a bit longer. Massive one. And the first one was a brownish color. This one was a dark gray color. I said, drop the cabinet. They dropped the cabinet down. I said, there's a very big snake under there. So there's another snake in the room somewhere. And the big one was in the room somewhere when we saw the small snake, which wasn't small. It was just smaller than this enormous one. And so that one is now out, and the big one is now in. Sure. So I said, okay, let's just bump around and move around a bit in the other side of the house, see if we can scare the second one back in. They said, I can hear a noise. I went back, I said, okay, now this time we're going to do it, we're ready. You lift the cabinet, I'm going to grab the first snake that's there, because it seems they're both there. Now we're going to grab the first one out and bag it. Then we'll go for the second one. They lift the cabinet, the big one's gone, the smaller one's back. Anyway, I grabbed it with a grab stick and yanked it out. It was a beautiful specimen, big snake. I mean, 6 foot is no mean snake. It's big. And got out, I got it firmly behind the head, took it out of the tongs behind the head, showed everybody, put it in the bag, put the bag in the tin, said, right, now for the big one. Lifted the cabinet, wasn't there. Went around the side again, pushed around in the furniture, etc. Heard the sound of a snake moving back under the cabinet, said, right, ready. They lifted it up, and there was this enormous cobra. I just couldn't believe it. Grabbed the thing with a grab stick, pulled it out, pulled it outside. Now, they had a big reaction to the first cobra. When they saw this one, they actually screamed, jumped up, and started doing a strange sort of a dance, a dance of fear under the tree, which could have been quite amusing if it wasn't so severe and they weren't so shocked. And dear old Francina couldn't speak. She was stuttering, like she'd had some lifelong speech impediment. Well, I must say I don't blame her. You know, many people in Africa are bitten in their beds, children in their cots, people walking around the house at night by cobras, because cobras hunt at night and they move into houses and they get into beds and they get into cots and they're all over the show. And very dangerous situation. I will not sleep in a room if I know there's a cobra in that room, because they often get into people's beds looking for food. When they come up against your warm body and smell it, and you smell like a mammal, you're warm, sometimes make an exploratory bite, and then you're in trouble. So I couldn't blame them at all for the reaction they had. Bagged that snake as well, and said to Francina, unfortunately we have to go back now, you'll have to redo your house. I suggest what you do is give it a good clean. Now you've got your family here, clean up the house, move everything out, clean it up. If you do find another snake, phone me. There is signal, my phone is on, you can phone me, you don't have to run up to the house, it's 2 miles. Just phone, I'll come back down again if you find another one. I must tell you that there were snakes, shed snake skins under that cabinet, indicating that the snakes had been living there for at least 2 years. Now, this is an amazing situation. These snakes had obviously been hunting at night after the family were asleep. They would go out the cabinet, out the big hole. They would go into the garden. There were often snakes eating their small chickens, and this is them. They were the snakes living in their own house, eating their chickens outside, eating the rats, of course, eating other small animals. Then come back inside before morning, snug up underneath the cabinet, while the family got up, got dressed, had breakfast, walked around, cleaned up, did their thing, went off to school. And I guess whilst they were at school, the snakes would then pop outside to get a bit of sun and go for a stroll, if you know what I mean. and then get back inside before they came home. So they were living this kind of symbiotic relationship in a way. Unfortunately, on that Saturday, and normally they're at school, at sports and all the rest of it, the one daughter came home unexpectedly, and the snake had obviously been out for a stroll checking out the house. After all, it was their house too. And she saw it. And that's when they called us. This is a bizarre story, and these people were not harmed in all those years, living with those gigantic snakes, raising the family, children in bed, moving around the house. Absolutely unbelievable. But what a wonderful story. Hey, by the way, I do have Patreon, so you can join me there too.